Now, this is a rare piece on the front page of the daily bribing Boris graph. And this piece on the very top of the daily bribing Boris graph is byline to Alistair Heath as a comment. And it's extraordinarily worded. Whether it's sincere or not will become clear in the contents, but the main headline or heading is radarless. Radarless. So we can say in Siloti, Bedisha, in Bengali Dishara, ideologically bereft. And itar kuno disha nai, ar itar kuno adorsho nai, kuno photo nai. Ida khali ekhon. And they are calling about. So this is a comment about the Tories, the Conservatives. And according to Alistair Heath, the Tories are drifting into an autumn of political chaos. So it's not going to be really serious, in-depth admission of the truth. But it's a kind of sensationalist, attention-seeking, attention-grabbing heading to Alistair Heath's comment. And in that picture, you can see the congenital liar Boris Johnson sitting not very far from Brenda's son, Brian, that is Charles. So this is part A of the Khoodeelaar television channel, Diagnosing Fleet Street, world exclusive diagnosis of Fleet Street. We have to say that we didn't broadcast in the last 48 hours due to logistical issues. But I don't think that we have really missed any of the evidence that would be exclusively available if we had the broadcast done during the last 48 hours. Because the contents of the Fleet Street papers may be, in terms of items, they are differently worded at different names. But the narrative, the agenda is the same. And the word bereft can be used about Fleet Street as well, because it is bereft of honesty and the truth and truthfulness. And regardless of the particular names, places, and times and events that were in the papers in the last 48 hours, they were not different ideologically, ethically, morally, politically, socially at all. And this Alistair Heath, who is to be the kind of person in charge of the City AM, it's a morning outlet. His political ideology is totally corrupt. So therefore, his piece on the front page, that is in the red, and his picture about the Conservatives is not genuine and not honest. Now, as far as the east end of London, the East London is concerned, and in the last week, the main kind of mainstream interest in referring to Tower Hamlets has been pegged to the 31-year-old Afsana Begum being on trial for housing fraud. Her trial began on the 21st of July at the Snaresbrook Crown Court, which is in the London Borough, wider East London Borough of Redbridge. And the summing up of the charges and the prosecution case against her took place yesterday, which is the working day week to the day. Like her started her hearing, her trial began on the 21st, which was the Wednesday, I think, and the summing up took place on the Wednesday, the 28th. And in the summing up, the prosecution licensed law trader called James Marsden has summed up what he has summed up. Let's see if we can find it. If we can find it, we can read that summing up. And this is the piece online on the Daily Mail. They haven't got this one in the actual print version of the Daily Mail. So this one is reading, Labour MP Afsana Begum, within a semi-quotation, acted dishonestly, and again, to jump the queue on the social housing register. Court hears in £64,000 council flat fraud trial. Now, what they are saying there in the headline about £64,000 is not really the fact. It is misleading. The cost is far more than 64,000, but we shall not be going to the breakdown of what actually the cost is until after the trial is officially declared as having completed. So the subheadings under that heading, online heading in the Daily Mail, online, there are 4 lines. One is Labour MP Afsana Begum, 31, is in court charged with 3 counts of fraud. The second line is she is accused of conning a local council out of £64,000 in housing benefits. The third line is prosecutors say Begum, that is Afsana Begum, claimed that she was living in overcrowded conditions. The MP for Poplar and Limehouse denies the allegations, and the trial continues. Now, that was the online piece updated at 16:22 hours GMT yesterday, 28th of July 2021. And we shall read the first 3 paragraphs of the online summary. A Labour MP accused of conning a local council out of £64,000 in housing benefits acted dishonestly to make personal gain and jump the queue on the social housing register. A court heard yesterday, that was yesterday, that is Wednesday, the 28th of July 2021. Afsana Begum, 31, the MP for Poplar and Limehouse in East London, claimed she was living in overcrowded conditions with her family when she was in a 4-bedroomed house with 3 other people, jurors were told. She successfully gained a social housing tenancy in under 4 months, rather than the average 3-year wait due to her claims, a court heard. Begum, who is on trial at Snaresbrook Crown Court, later blamed her partner, local councillor Ehtashamul Haq, for making an application to Tower Hamlets Council in her name, it is claimed. Well, that name, Ehtashamul Haq, the Haq bit is similarly spelled to my name, but it is not anything to do with any relation. This is not a person who is related to me or who is known to me in any significant way, except for a very short communication during the May 2018 local council election, at which he was the first time, he was a candidate for a council election for the first time ever. The MP who won the East London seat of Poplar and Limehouse with a 28,904 majority in the general election in December 2009, that is her first ever election, denies 3 counts of fraud. Now there are 2 pictures. One is a photograph and another is a drawing of her underneath that. The alleged incidents relate to periods between January 2013 and March 2016, in which period the London Borough of Tower Hamlets alleges housing Begum cost £63,928 in rent. Begum said she vigorously contests these malicious and false allegations that she failed to tell the council that she was no longer living in overcrowded conditions when she made her claims. Today, prosecutor James Marsland, that's the name I was looking for, told jurors they must consider whether Begum's case comprises of her misfortune for things occurring or significant facts which count against her. Marsland said, "How you know that Miss Begum says that the property at Woodstock Terrace, Poplar, was always a 3-bedroom house? There is no real room for mistake there." I'll read that paragraph again because I misread the now as how. So reading again, he said, "Now you know that Miss Begum says that this property at Woodstock Terrace, Poplar, was always a 3-bedroom house. There is no real room for mistake there." Continuing Marsland's quotation by the Mail on Sunday, Mail Online, "If you walked into the living room and noticed a bed in there, you would back yourself. Miss Begum," reading again, "Miss Begum's aunt has said in August 2009 that the property is 4 beds and has gone on to set out the various people living in those 4 bedrooms. It is not a slip of the pen, is it? Well, I have said bedrooms, but I mean, is it beds and bedrooms? Whether they are confusing beds with bedrooms will become very clear later. Not very clear in this particular paragraph. But let's say that 4 bedrooms are being used to mean 4 beds. That is what the context would suggest. But let's leave that paragraph and move on. This is part of the application by Miss Begum's mother, for council tax benefit. And Miss Begum's mother says the property at this point was used as 4 bedrooms. So continuing to the next paragraph within quotes, and quotes attributable to James Marsland, the prosecutor. Is it just misfortune that Miss Begum's mother and Miss Begum's aunt made the same inexplicable mistake? Or is it again a significant fact that counts against Miss Begum? Continuing to the next paragraph, which is a sentence. There would be no reason to exaggerate the number of rooms. On 21 May 2013, we know that Miss Begum is taken or escorted from Woodstock Terrace, Poplar, to St. Bernard Terrace, Whitechapel. On 14th of June 2013, that is the next, just under a month since the 21st of May 2013, we know that that is the date given by Miss Begum that she told council tax customer services about the change of address. She tried to ride 2 horses on this. In any event, she knew she needed to tell towners housing options. It only takes a moment to think about it. So there is a picture of her taken in the Houses of Parliament, and she's pictured wearing a hijab and a red dress, and there is a kind of badge, presumably, apparently looks like the Labour Party badge. And the caption there reads, the MP who won the East London seat of Poplar and Limehouse with 28,904 majority in the general election in December 2019 denies 3 counts of fraud. So continuing into the body of the online Daily Mail piece about her, and still quoting James Marsland, the prosecutor, the prosecution would say that she is specifically avoiding telling housing options. Then we reach another fork in the road. Miss Begum says around this time she did tell housing options. Is it her misfortune that nobody logged it and nobody actioned it? Question mark. Continuing the quotations. Or is that a significant fact that she didn't do it? That's why it's not logged or actioned. Mr. Marsland, that is the Daily Mail online saying, not within quotation. This is Mr. Marsland then highlights the bids made on Begum's account just before and during her time living with her husband at St. Bernard Terrace. He continued, that is James Marsland, the prosecutor, and that again starts with a quotation. Is it Miss Begum's misfortune that Mr. Haque, that is her now ex-husband, Ehtashamul Haque, who is not a relation to me, never has been and never is likely to be. He continued, is it Mrs. Begum's misfortune that Mr. Haque chooses this very time, right at the start, before she's even moved in, to look through her notebook to find her customer reference number and to then begin making bids? Question mark. Continuing the quotation of James Marsland, referring to Afsana Begum's now ex-husband, Mr. Haque could make no gain from making these social housing bids without Miss Begum being involved. Continuing the quotation, he couldn't make a gain without her being involved. She would have been contacted. Continuing the quotation, she would have been asked to go for a viewing. He couldn't achieve anything. It was pointless. Then the Mail Online says, Mr. Marsland also asked the jury to consider how it could happen on 2 occasions that calls made by Begum were not logged or actioned by staff at Housing Options. Daily Mail Online continues. He added, quotation, is it a misfortune that this has happened twice? The 2 times she calls up, years apart, the same thing happens. Continuing the quotation, don't you need to suspend belief a bit here and there if Miss Begum is right? Continuing the quotation, but then, members of the jury, if you actually just put in the one fact that is forbidden to Miss Begum, that she is guilty. Then quotation continues. If you put in the one fact that she was dishonestly withholding information on several occasions, that would affect her application. It's just a series of connected significant facts that count against her. In this period of time, to put it plainly, Miss Begum prioritized her own needs over those of others on the housing register. Quotation continues. She wanted to retain falsely her higher priority so that she could get a social housing tenancy. Try explaining that to the other people on that list. So the Daily Mail Online reverts back to its own narrative. Last week, Mr. Marsland told the court that before she was a sitting MP, Begum had worked at social housing group Tower Hamlets Homes from 2013 and read that again. Last week, Mr. Marsland told the court that before she was a sitting MP, Begum had worked at social housing group Tower Hamlets Homes from 2013 and 2016, including as a housing advisor. Now, the reading sometimes is affected by the light that is on the screen, so apologies for any misconception unintentionally caused by the effect of the lighting. So the Daily Mail Online says, he told jurors that because of her position, Begum was, they've left out the word was, but that is what they contextually meant. She was aware of the banding system and how she was able to manipulate it to jump the queue. So there was a technical expertise that she used or abused, according to James Marsland. The prosecutor added, within quotes, in July 2011, so this whole series of allegations against her actually range from 2009 up to the time that they have used the time concluding period of her perpetration of the fraud, according to them. In July 2011, Ms. Begum applied to join the Social Housing Register for London Bara of Tar Hamlers. They have, well, somebody has left a definitive article, the London Borough of Tar Hamlers. But anyway, so the next sentence within quotation, she remained on the register until March 7, 2016, when she was awarded the tenancy of a studio flat. The basis of her application was that she was living in overcrowded conditions in her family home. In making the application, Ms. Begum was under an obligation, ongoing duty, to inform the relevant department of London Borough of Tar Hamlets of any changes in her circumstances. The prosecution case is that over 3 distinct periods of time, Ms. Begum deliberately and dishonestly did not inform London Borough of Tar Hamlets housing options of significant changes in her circumstances. The prosecution say the reason she didn't tell London Borough of Tar Hamlets housing options was that she knew that if she did tell them, I have just added 2 words, it would negatively affect her application. She withheld the information in order to gain a social housing tenancy. The defense response in a sentence is that at no point was she acting dishonestly. She said she kept London Borough of Tar Hamlets informed as best she could, including whilst she was going through, is left there, but I'm adding that, going through some difficult moments in her life, including in relation to her family and partner. Begum was one of 26 New Labour MPs elected in 2019, winning her seat with a majority of nearly 30,000. That is the Daily Mail online narrative. A supporter of former Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn and Momentum, she has spoken in Parliament about the impact of coronavirus on ethnic minorities, and she sits on the Commons Education Committee. She is also notable for being the chair of an all-party committee on domestic abuse and violence, and has spoken in the House of Commons about being a survivor. Begum denies 3 counts of housing fraud. The trial continues. Now, this is the full contents of the Mail Online item dated on Wednesday, 28th of July, 2021. Now, they say that the trial continues. It doesn't say up to what date. So we shall comment and examine the whole case after it is completely concluded officially. Because there is a sub judice rule, any comment will be deemed as being interfering with the trial process, so we shall not be commenting on anything except summarize and update on the facts. So what is happening in relation to the general behavior of Tar Hamlets Council in other respects is what we shall be reverting to, and that actually refers to the various attempts being made that appear to be designed to help the case against Shamima Begum. By the case here, we refer to the ruling by the so-called Supreme Court earlier this year, overturning the ruling by the Court of Appeal, which said that Shamima Begum should be allowed to return to the UK to challenge the Home Office's withdrawing of her British nationality by birth, British citizenship by birth. We shall not go into the full factual details of that because we have covered that already, except to say in context that the latest online publications pegged to a piece so-called documentary made by a Scottish man who was a member of the armed services working or deployed in the Middle East, either Iraq or Afghanistan, has given extensive allegations against Shamima Begum. And his source is her so-called husband, the Danish or European husband, who is known as also a jihadi. And this ex-soldier, British soldier, has brazenly praised this ex-husband of Shamima Begum. And the basis of his brazenly praising Shamima Begum's ex-husband or husband, I mean, you never know with these online outlets. Sometimes they say partner, sometimes they say husband, sometimes they say ex-husband. So we are only referring to things that we have come across online because we have no direct access to any of these people. But essentially, our campaign is that Shamima Begum and the other three girls, whether they are alive or not, is not the focus of our campaign. The focus of our campaign is that when they were children and they were being groomed and they were deemed to be being groomed, and we have again explained and stated all of those, they were owed safeguarding the children duties by the local council, that is the London Borough of Tower Hamlets Council. And there was no discharge of the duties, and there has been no evidence that the council has actually shown any care about the duties that it owed to those four girls. So our campaign is that the council should be made to discharge those duties. Of course, it cannot be made to discharge those duties at this time because the girls are no longer children. But we remain absolutely committed to holding Tower Hamlets Council accountable, in fact, to its duties as it owed to these four girls when the duties applied, when those four girls were children, when those four girls were being groomed and manipulated. Again, we have extensively stated the various details, implications, impact, and we have named both Lutfur Rahman and John Biggs, and collectively we have mentioned the councillors. To this day, we cannot find any evidence of any kind of reference by Tower Hamlets Council to their safeguarding the children duties as they owed to these four girls. And we shall be updating on those in due course. The online piece that has been doing the rounds and linked with this Scottish ex-British soldier, all its contents and context suggest that he is a spy, that he is one of the racists that have been deployed to make contact with Shamima Begum, to extract information and then distribute the information, whether distorted or doctored, we cannot tell at this time, except that the line from this particular ex-British soldier, Scottish one, shows that he is a shameless agent and a spy engaged in doing Shamima Begum damaged in relation to the legal claims. We shall elaborate on that, and the line would be on the evidence, and we have what I have just said is based on the evidence. And there is no acknowledgement. There is no acknowledgement in the latest propaganda against Shamima Begum of the fact that this was a child victim of negligence by her local council, which could have prevented her from falling victim to the wider consequences and wider danger. But that's the line. And that is based fundamentally on the domestic and international laws and we shall be updating in due course. Suffice to say that despite the fact that we have made comments about Armed Council, nobody from the council has got in touch with this program or made any discernible comment about their duties of care under the safeguarding the children duties that they failed, neglected. So we shall update in due course at the due point in future. Now today's Daily Mail is full of this end of the rules and restrictions about COVID-19 and of course the swimming triumph of the Team GB. And there is a propaganda piece on behalf of the UK state against Vladimir Putin at the Olympics. But the piece that we actually have correctly, again, diagnosed and diagnostically correctly been vindicated about is the piece about Wayne Rooney, the footballer. We called for him to be prosecuted and we described him as a crook and a criminal liar because he lied. And the fact that his wife, who is pictured very, very seductively in this item, was standing by him, gave the game away that he was a liar. All the evidence that we examined based on the publicity that he had been blackmailed and that he had complained to the police about these party girl photos, we said were lies. We said that he was the one who got involved with the girls, not the girls targeting him or abusing or exploiting him. and that he was doing a propaganda thing. Now, the regular thing that can be found in the life of these two, Colin Rooney and Wayne Rooney, is that they are always involved in some kind of semi-pornographic or corrupt criminal side business, not about his skills as a footballer. Colin Rooney is currently the defendant in a defamation case brought by somebody else, Rebecca Vardy. We shall not go into details of that, except to mention that. And that is, again, to do with Colin Rooney, according to Rebecca Vardy, behaving inappropriately and lying about the source or sources of mentions of her on social media. It's nothing to do with her. I mean, Wayne Rooney is a footballer. The fact that she is married to him gives her no license to engage in sub-pornographic and defamatory activities, and so on. So we shall say that Rooney has now apologized to the family, his family, over blackmail party girl photos as he buys them up for £1. Now, this is to do with the fact that as his current job would be lost if this seedy, pornographic, prostitutional propaganda continued. Then he would lose his current job. Footballers are no longer sports people. Footballers are prostitutes, and their partners are prostitutes. That is the main catch. And Wayne Rooney is one of the most notorious ones. I mean, it doesn't matter how many goals he scored. It is the integrity, the dignity, and the comparative purity of sports that have been affected by him and his behavior. And this is to do with big business being allowed unaccountable access to control football and turn football into a kind of obscene game for crooks and criminals, not for sports and the values of sports independently judged. And here is another crook, Simon Cowell, who's now ended his pornographic ventures. Now, there is an unusual piece in the sense that the people whose cause is being promoted here are Afghans. Pause there. They're not ordinary Afghans. They're not Afghan citizens. They're Afghan stooges for the occupation army. They were the translators. And we shall be talking more about the case, except to say that this is absolutely unprecedented. Any Afghan, Arab, or Asian or African would not be given this kind of promotion, positive coverage in Fleet Street, which is absolutely hostile and racist, and anti-Afghan, anti-Muslim, anti-African, anti-Asian. And where is she from? It's an East European woman is the subject of this two-page feature article by the Daily Mail, which is describing this. In an ingenious heist, a top Bond Street jeweler is duped by a punter who swaps 4.2 million pounds of diamonds with pebbles via a secret compartment in her handbag. Now she has been found guilty, but the boutique's still looking for its gems. And they've got the picture of the woman. We shall just briefly put that before the camera. And then we move on to Ken Clark. We said in Twitter comments about Ken Clark that he was a liar, that he was a racist liar. We had nothing to do with what the Daily Mail is calling him. We knew our campaign, our movement knows Ken the lying Clark historically. And Clark was in the post of the UK's cabinet minister at the expense of education when John Major was in post, and we defended the parent governors at the Stratford School in Stratford in Newham. We defended the parent governors as part of the action of the London Collective of Black Governors, which I lead, which I organized after I got elected by black school governors in 1970, in 1988, at an annual conference of a organization that was differently named, held in the London Borough of Camden. That is the organization that stepped in to defend the parents is called the London Collective of Black Governors. And I'm not going to go into the details of that particular intervention, except to say that Ken the liar Clark was in post of the Secretary of State. And according to the piece published by the Sunday Times at the time about my intervention, they said that Ken Clark was playing into my hands politically. Again, I'm not going to go into the details of that action, except to say that by judging by his reactions to my intervention at the Stratford School and my advocacy of the parent governors and my rejection of the racist education bureaucracies that Clark was the titular head of, I concluded that this was a fraudster in terms of politics, because Clark had been continuously a member of the government. That is, he was either an undersecretary or Secretary of State for a very long time, too long. And when I noticed him first was not at the time that I was defending the parents, governors at the Stratford School, but when Clark was in dispute with the NHS staff, the language he used was language that could be expected from a conservative. He was intolerant to the rights of the nurses and others that were affected adversely by his policy. But the point is that Clark was painted by the conservative liars in Fleet Street as a soft conservative, as a wet conservative, as a moderate conservative, as a conservative who was not as extreme, as right-wing, or as fascistic as the others. So, what happened in the course of the dispute that the nurses and junior doctors and others in the NHS were having with the occupant in the post of Secretary of State for the Health Service was that he began to ridicule them, undermine them as human beings, and completely come across as being in denial of their human rights and entitlements. That is what came across. Now that was during the period before the Stratford School events. And during the debate later, as a conservative, occupant or conservative answering the questions, he ridiculed the Lib Dems and he said, keep taking the tablets. Now that is not the mindset of somebody who recognizes and respects other people's rights and other people's entitlements, safety. So that's the general summary of the background. But the Daily Mail itself, which is running this piece, a bloody disgrace, I'll come to that, had backed Ken Clarke when he stood for the leadership of the Conservative Party. And it was the Daily Mail that used the phrase big beast about Ken Clarke. Ken Clarke intellectually is not a big beast. Ken Clarke morally is not a big beast. In fact, there is no big beast in the Conservative Party currently, and have not been any really significant big beasts. Even the likes of Dominic Grieve, who was overhyped by the kind of anti-Brexiteers, even the likes of the other conservatives that Johnson banished out of the front bench, out of any main platform because they opposed Brexit. When it comes to actually looking at the contents of their ideology, they are not any different from one another. And Dominic Grieve himself gave away the game when he refused to support any opposition to the Conservatives, and he and Clarke vehemently condemned Jeremy Corbyn. Now, I am no fan of Jeremy Corbyn, as anyone viewing this program will know. I think Jeremy Corbyn is intellectually unfit. I have known Corbyn, not every day, but I have known Corbyn for decades. And Corbyn introduced himself to me by praising my ability to make effective public speeches. That was 5 years after Ken Livingstone did the same in 1977, after a public meeting where I was one of the speakers as well as Livingstone. And Livingstone said the exact same praise as Corbyn. So it must be some kind of tactical ploy they use. I don't know, but neither of them has actually followed up their praise of me by showing any action in support of the action that I take. So we shall be going to that item by Ian Birrell in a minute. Ian Birrell writes the piece about Ken Clarke, and it says, that's the headline. or the heading. Ian Birrell writes about Ken Clark. And this is about the Bloods scandal. It's one of the most shameful episodes in NHS history. So how, asks Ian Birrell, can Ken Clark treat the tainted blood inquiry with such callous contempt? Well, I'll tell you. I'll tell Ian Birrell. Because the Daily Mail has allowed the callous contempt that Clark has shown to all opposition, all people that are not conservatives. And this is the reason, without going into the actual details of Ken Clark, because we have already condemned him as a liar in the preliminary kind of comments that we made after he became reportedly mentioned as the former conservative health secretary who was in denial about the impact of the conservative policies on contaminating the blood. So there is a piece called FT Big Read, and it starts, critics fear that post-Brexit changes to immigration policy reflect a desire to limit the flow of migrants into the UK and ignore the needs of business, with some sectors now warning of acute labor shortages. It's a piece by Robert Wright. And there is a quote, "You are made to feel incredibly unwanted." Now, this is a full page piece with a picture of Priti Patel, whom we have mentioned, must have had a facelift or more than one facelift. Because her appearance, the facial appearance, looks uncontroversial now. What do I mean by that? I mean by that, the widely reported disagreement between the BBC's Andrew Marr and Priti Patel, following Patel's appearance on a recent Andrew Marr program. And the comment by Andrew Marr directed at Priti Patel, asking her why she was smiling. Now, that was not Priti Patel smiling, as she said later, and as the Home Office and the Conservatives have said later. That was Priti Patel looking normal. She doesn't look normal in that form, in that architecture on her face anymore. That architecture has changed. And that is only possible after a facelift. Because ever since she became a public figure. All the pictures until this year of Priti Patel have shown her facially in a way that suggested that she was either mocking the person she was in conversation with, or she was making some kind of facial response that was not so consistent with what was expected. So that's the picture of Priti Patel that cannot be found in the last 15 years. And this is a recent one. Anyway, this piece by Robert Wright is saying that the immigrant is not made to feel incredibly wanted. So it's a long one-page read. So let's now, this is a stupid conclusion. It's supposed to be critical of Priti Patel's anti-migrant kind of policy. But it is, this piece itself is against the majority of the countries of origin of these people, the migrants, suffering brain drain, let's say, on a massive scale. Now that is not a responsible position, but let's read these stupid last two paragraphs. Of the 6 million EU SS applications, 2.33 million received only temporary pre-settled status. Those affected could lose the right to stay if, after 5 years, they fail to prove they are permanently settled in the UK. Our biggest concern is not actually today, adds Reynolds. Reynolds is one of the sources used in this article. But what happens in 5 years' time? Picciari, however, fears that Britain is losing its reputation as a good place for the best people to work. Reading that one again. Britain is losing its reputation as a good place for the best people to work. And he is quoted, "In the past, I had colleagues asking me about coming here to work." By colleagues, he means colleagues in foreign countries. He says, "I haven't heard anyone asking for a long time now." There is no recognition there of the impact, brainwash, brain drying, and brain drain being done to the countries of origin, especially countries of origin in Africa and Asia that are actually countries where the level of income and remuneration is far lower than that available in the UK for the particular skilled personnel. And there is no recognition of that not just in the financial crimes, but in other outlets from Fleet Street, including The Guardian, which leads with the piece about Brenda, that is Queen Elizabeth II, that she employed her lawyers to lobby ministers for climate law waiver to interfere with the recognition of climate change. So let's see what, if there is any, this is an interval, let's say, just checking if there is any kind of update on the ongoing case, housing fraud case. And trial of Shamima Begum. If it is possible today, after yesterday's summary to the jurors at the Snaresbrook Crown Court, that today Afsana Begum's defense would be up, addressing the jurors in response to James Marsland. Well, as far as the online pieces are concerned, there is no direct mainstream report about anything that Afsana Begum's licensed law trader, is it a woman called Helen Law? Whoever it is, she might be saying or she might be preparing to say, but we shall check appropriately and update in due course. Going back to the Times, the Guardian front page, and the interference by Brenda, the Queen, the monarch, with the law. Let's see what it says. The Queen's lawyer secretly lobbied Scottish ministers to change a draft law to exempt her private land from a major initiative to cut emissions, documents reveal. The exemption means that the Queen, one of the largest landowners in Scotland, is the only person in the country not required to facilitate the construction of pipelines to heat buildings using renewable energy. Her lawyer secured the dispensation from Scotland's government 5 months ago by exploiting an obscure parliamentary procedure known as Queen's Consent, which gives the monarch advance citing of legislation. The arcane mechanism has been borrowed from Westminster, where it has existed as a custom since the 1700s. In a series of reports into Queen's Consent in recent months, The Guardian revealed how the Queen repeatedly used privileged access to draft laws to lobby ministers to change UK legislation to benefit private interest to reflect her opinions between the late 1960s and the 1980s. It should prompt concerns about the practice's existence. Adam Tucker, constitutional law expert. Well, I would say that this quote from Adam Tucker shows that he is not a constitutional law expert at all. Any genuine constitutional law expert should express outrage and demand that Brenda should be prevented from making such interference. Because she's supposed to be in there as the constitutional law monarch. Now this mental slave, Arif Akbar, on page 13 of The Guardian, is ecstatic in overhyping the performance theatre review, the performance of Joseph and the amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. We shall cover Arif Akbar and Yasmin Alibai C and their counterpart from India, who are all women and all used as mental slaves, stooges by the racist Fleet Street and their counterparts in broadcast. And here is the anti-Muslim Guardian being in denial about the genocide of Rohingya Muslims done by Aung San Suu Kyi when she was the head of the regime that carried out the massacres and the genocide, the rapes and murders of the Muslims in Burma. What is Steve Bell's cartoon saying today? No, it's not Steve Bell, it is Martin Rowson. Martin Rowson also publishes his creations in the Communist Party Morning Star. So there is a piece about a naked man chasing boar. This is from Berlin by Kate Connolly. A woman whose photograph of a naked man in pursuit of a wild boar at a Berlin lakeside went viral has said she might take legal action against a company that has immortalized the spectacle for model railway enthusiasts. Adele Landau told German media she resented the fact that others are making money from her snapshot, which went around the world last August. The drama she captured played out after a wild boar, nicknamed Elsa by bathers, stole the man's laptop in a bag she was likely to have believed contained food. It has now been adapted into a plastic figurine set costing £13.99 and being sold as an embellishment for the landscape of a model railway set. Actually, this boar was carrying the bag because it suspected it had food in it. How stupid can human beings be? They don't recognize, most of these people featured in this, including particularly that man, they don't recognize the possibility that animals like the boar might have been affected by the presence of food. In their bags. Martin Rosen, whose cartoons are published by the Communist Party daily Morning Star, is like the Morning Star, a very stiff, racist moron. Well, Fleet Street cartoons, including the Guardian Steve Bell, are in the jobs that they are in because they too imitate and perpetuate the racist denial in terms of the composition of the society. They don't recognize the existence, not just numerically, the existence of the population made up of people from Africa and Asia and the other parts of other non-European, non-white parts of the world. Today's newspapers cost our campaign, these ones without the inclusion of the others, the ones that we are looking at now. These cost us £20, UK pounds. Now this is, £20 is not available to ordinary people in among the many. So we have to have daily make special efforts to find the necessary costs to cover the purchase. Now remember, this program doesn't come as friends or as paywalled or in any way as a business mode. We broadcast this as a 100% contribution to the searchers of knowledge, scholars and investigators and campaigners. And as we say, this is part A, but any part, all the parts. So the picture of Colin Rooney who is that man sitting near her on the so-called holiday in Wales? The picture of her is very telling. This is the picture that is doing the rounds. Is it supposed to show a contrast to her kind of physical attractiveness in comparison with the girls that Rooney lied about, or Rooney's latest lie has been about? That's the picture that's been online and in the Sun and the others. So these are the people who are, people in the what is called the gullibles. And the editorial in the Daily Mirror today about the 30 young persons who have been stabbed to death from the start of this year is meek, ignorant, and stupid. Because it doesn't talk about the role of the schools, it doesn't talk about the role of the decision makers holding positions of being treated as role models in society, and there is absolutely no recognition of the failures of the court systems. Yet Daily Mirror on page 15 gives the promotion to this moron, the mayor at the expense of London. The stupid git says, "While there is breath in me, I'll continue to fight scourge of knife crime, the stupid liar." This is a lie. He doesn't know what fighting means and what scourge is. There is no accountability anywhere at any level for crimes. That is the whole point. We shall comment extensively in a brand new update later, not necessarily in this edition, but later edition or editions. The Times is the only one which is running this piece. The others have abandoned, given up. They think that there is no need to keep any more restrictions on COVID-19. The fears over health risk from amber travelers. There is a piece in the Times on page 9 which reads, "I'm not Putin's cashier," says Abramovich. Roman Abramovich has told the High Court that allegations that he bought Chelsea's FC to extend Russian influence in Britain were seriously defamatory. The billionaire oligarch claims a book about President Putin's rise to power portrays him as a cashier for the Russian leader and a custodian of slush funds. Abramovich, 54, says 26 passages in the book Putin's People by the investigative journalist Catherine Belton damage his standing and would deter people from dealing with him. We shall talk more about that another time, because libel claims such as the one I have read are not allowed to the many by the corrupt criminal judicial bureaucracy in this country. And talking about crime, Johnson is reported to have avoided question on Cressida Dick's second term as Commissioner of the Metropolitan Police. And the Times today, the letters in the Times today are again from people with European names, not a single African or Asian name. So the racist agenda of the Times continues. And there is a Peter Brooks cartoon in the Times on page 24, which reads, man's, women's, and children's multiple skulls. That is about the Taliban 2020. And the piece under the Thunderer column headed, "It's not insulting to call someone a grandmother," by Melanie Phillips. So the Times is saying that there will be risk from amber travelers, but no other paper is running any main story on the state of the easing of the restrictions. And the sun is going big on Simon Cowell's axing of the X factor. Now, as I said, the scum is running the same pornographic picture of Colin Rooney. I am sorry, Colin and Derby. So Derby is the football club which employs, Derby County Football Club is the employer, current employer, where Wayne Rooney is a manager. So that's the reason why he's apologizing. But the photo of Colin Rooney, they're running with this particular apology is something that has never happened before. So what is Rod Liddell saying about Colin Rooney? He says, I think Wayne Rooney is beginning to show his age. He goes off with 3 lasses with enormous, and there is an obscene word, so in a nightclub. Then he goes back to their 60-pound a night hotel and promptly falls asleep. Meanwhile, the girls cheerfully take photos of the snoozing Shrek, and above them on every possible social media site. Wayne has apparently been forgiven for this indiscretion by his Mrs. Colin below, though I bet Rebecca Vardy is laughing her head off. Meanwhile, Derby County are reconsidering Wayne's humongous contract I suspect Derby fans may not be necessarily grieving. As manager, Rooney almost got them relegated last season. So this is a kind of reference to Rebecca Vardy suing Colin Rooney herself for claiming that she, Rebecca Vardy, was the source of these various leaks about Rooney appearing on social media. There is a seal that got on board a vehicle in, is it in Australia? Let's see. Novice paddleboarder Rachel Towers gets the seal of approval from this cheeky hitchhiker. She and pal Sam Ball were enjoying the hot weather when it jumped aboard, even posing for pictures. How did they know that the seal was posing for pictures? She said, "He was jumping off my board. He was just so tame and really friendly. I'm still new to paddleboarding, but I can't see how I'll top that." Now that is true, but where did it happen? They don't say. As the seal. Why should anyone believe Boris Johnson? So there is no update at this stage to Afsana Begum's trial. So whatever her defense might have said today is yet to reach the mainstream of the news sites. And it is possible that they would be posting any content between now and 6 o'clock local time. Now we've got an interest in the racist criminal, also known as the ex-President Sarkozy in France. And we have an interest in this woman, Rachida Dati, who is a crook. We have called her a crook before. So you notice that this is a world exclusive diagnosis of late Street and the media and the politics. So far, none of our assessments and diagnostic analysis has been proven to have been other than the truth in context. So Rachida Dati, who is described in the caption as a former justice minister under Nicolas Sarkozy, was charged over payments from ex-Renault boss Carlos Ghosn. Now, Carlos Ghosn is the one that has been the subject of many judicial processes about this car company. So let's read the first few paragraphs of this one by Henry Samuel in Paris. Prominent French right-winger Rachida Dati has been charged over payments she received from disgraced former Renault boss Carlos Ghosn, amounting to almost €1 million. Ms. Dati, a former justice minister in ex-President Nicolas Sarkozy's administration, yesterday dismissed the charges as a political smear ahead of next year's presidential elections. She is considering running in the primaries for her conservative party, the Republicans. France's Financial Crimes Unit said it is placing her under official investigation for passive corruption by a person holding an elective mandate and of benefiting from abuse of power. I mean, Dati doesn't look like she's going to beat whoever else is running. But Dati is in the correct company because Sarkozy the crook created credibility for France's racists and anti-Muslims by going over the top in denouncing Muslims generally in order to come across as being as strongly against Muslims as Marine Le Pen. And Dati has been a colluder with the anti-Muslim Sarkozy and others. And Dati herself claims to be of Arab origin herself. She is a typical stooge. So we shall be putting this part A, to an end at this time, 11:07 hours GMT, and we shall continue in due course.